Hello, sophomores. This is Father Manco, and we're going to be talking about celibacy and a couple of the definitions that relate to that. So this is going to be kind of a quick overview of the definitions and the regulations in the Western Church. So first of all, celibacy is about a permanent state of being unmarried. And it's not that you're between relationships, so none of you are celibate. I'm celibate because I've made a commitment to not getting married. So that's something that's different. It's about the state of being unmarried. That's different than continence, which is simply refraining from sexual activity. Now, you can be married and refrain from sexual activity, or you can be celibate and refrain from sexual activity. So if you're a priest and you've committed to celibacy, you should also be continent, meaning you should not be engaging in any sexual activity. But continence can be temporary. You know, a couple might decide to not have sexual activity because of a medical reason, or they don't want children right at that point in time, or whatever. Continence basically means nothing. You know, no romantic kissing, no sexual activity of any kind by yourself or with another, no pornography. And especially for people who are celibate and continent, basically not a zip, zero, zilch, nothing. All right. The third key term we need to have here in our repertoire is chastity. So chastity is a virtue, and it helps regulate our sexual desires and aligns them with reason. It doesn't mean that we have no desires. It just means that our sexual desires are directed towards good things and not bad things. So chastity, because it's a virtue, perfects our desires and our actions. Now, being chaste can include having sexual activity, but it has to be, you know, at the right time with the right person once the correct commitments have been made, basically, in marriage. And so chastity is something that can include sex, unlike continence or celibacy, which imply that there shouldn't be any of that kind of activity. So let me give you one example of what I mean by chastity. I heard this example from a married woman named Professor Eleanor Stump, one of the brightest women in the world, actually. And she's a lay Dominican woman and has a married couple of kids. And she was visiting a friend in Israel many years ago. And he was taking her around. They spent all day together, and he took her around to various sites around Jerusalem. And you know, he said to her once, you know, the reason that people, you know, can trust you with me is because, you know, everybody knows I love my wife and I'm very devoted to her. So they're driving along a little bit more, and the guy says again, yeah, well, you know, people trust me because, you know, I love my wife. And Professor Stump said, no, silly. People can trust you with me because you love me. Basically, she was implying that because he loved her, he wouldn't do anything with her. Not just because he'd be breaking his commitment to someone else, but because he cared about her. And because he cared about her, he wasn't going to try and get her to break her commitments to her husband and to engage in activity that was not moral. So a chaste person is one who does the right thing, but also for the right reason, because there's some good thing that they're protecting, something good that they love. Now, in terms of what are the rules and regulations in the church about chastity and marriage and continence? So in the early church, actually for hundreds of years, we have clergy who were married. And there seems to be a lot of historical misinformation about there that somehow later on in time, the rule was imposed that you know, clergy had to be celibate. Now, it's true that the celibacy came later in time, but remember, celibacy is the permanent commitment to being unmarried. What we have a lot of evidence of historically, is that even from apostolic times, once a man was ordained as a deacon, as a priest, or as a bishop, he was expected not to have any more sexual relations with his wife. So oftentimes they would separate. She would go to a monastery and he would do his whole bishop or priestly thing, and that was to help him keep the commitment that he had made. And that seems to be the evidence of the most ancient rule we have. So yes, priests could be married, but that meant they weren't celibate, but then they were expected to be continent after ordination. Over time, the church decided that it was going to impose the rule of celibacy. So it was going to ask that, in general, men never be married. So they stopped choosing married men for the job. And currently the rule, which has been the rule for the Western Roman Church for about 1,000 years, is that celibacy is obligatory for all priests and bishops. Now there are some exceptions for Protestant ministers coming over who wish to be reordained. They let them keep their wives. Also, permanent deacons may be married before ordination, but they can't get married afterwards. And in the Eastern churches, so Orthodox and Catholic, so this would be Russian Orthodox Church, the Ukrainian Catholic Church, the Greek Catholic Church, the Egyptian Coptic Church, the Egyptian Catholic Coptic Church. They have celibacy as obligatory for all bishops. And that's why they take their bishops from monasteries, because monks have always been celibate. And deacons and priests may be married before ordination. But again, if the wife dies, they can't get remarried. And yeah, that's the last thing there. So no remarriage once you've been ordained. Okay, so that's it.